Hello, it's Big Chad, and this is the Trading Encyclopedia Daily Education series on my YouTube at Chad's Trading. Find me on Twitter at Big Chads and Bitcoin Live, where I am a founding analyst. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about a Japanese candlestick pattern called below the stomach. It's a 2-candlestick reversal pattern. It's rather rare, and it was actually pretty hard to find an example of it. But the idea, and of course you can pause and read this on your own time. And what might come to mind when you see the image, I'll show you right here, you might think, oh, that's kind of like the dark cloud cover, isn't it? Well, here's a dark cloud cover. The difference here with the dark cloud cover, it's also a 2-candle reversal. With the dark cloud cover pattern, you're closing below the midpoint of the candle, right? In this pattern, the below the stomach, here's an example, and here's the opposite one, the above the stomach. I have a separate video on that. But the idea here is you actually have a strong advance, and then you're actually below the midpoint. Rather than closing below the midpoint, you start below the midpoint, and you in the entire range of that second candle, you're not even able to breach past the midpoint of the first candle. The midpoint's important, the 50% level. You can think of the 50% retracement level. But let's look at one example. And again, I looked around. It's pretty hard to find any. But here is one. Now that's a little bit tricky. You may say, Chad, well, this is not a bullish candle. It actually is. Now, in equities, we get these gaps. We don't have them, of course, in crypto. We have a gap up and then another big gap up. So it's a pretty good candle, even though it closed red. This candle here closing at 542 is way above the prior session at 532. So it's still a bullish candle even though it's red. So strong advance into a bullish candle. The next day gaps down below and stays below the midpoint of the body. And maybe this one is right there, right at it or barely at it. Again, you're not going to get a super clean example. A lot of these patterns you see in the textbooks from Nissen or CMT or Schauback or any of these textbooks, it's hard to find many of these rare patterns. But this is just a fun one because it's got a fun name, below the stomach. And the idea is that this is the stomach of that advancing candle, and you can see the trend stalling. Now, while you may not find too many examples that are exactly textbook like this, you can understand the concept of the momentum reversal. And that's the lesson I want you to understand as you read about this pattern. You can see the context here and the interpretation and all that, and you look at the image. But I want you to train yourself when you read this to understand that there's a momentum story. There's an advance, the price is stalling, and it's not even able to make it back up above the midpoint of the prior candle. So it's a 2-candlestick reversal pattern, a Japanese candlestick reversal pattern below the stomach. And this is for the Trading Encyclopedia Daily Education series on my YouTube at Chad's Trading. Find me on Twitter at Big Chads and Bitcoin Live, where I'm a founding analyst. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Big Chads out.